Hi, and welcome to Pages Aloud. We're so glad you're here. Today we're continuing our journey through the English dictionary with our continuation of the letter A. Whether you're learning, curious, or just love words, this one's for you. Let's begin. Anatreptic, overthrowing, defeating, applied to Plato's refutative dialogues. Anatron, native carbonate of soda, natron. Anatrople, alt of anatropous. Anatropous, having the ovule inverted at an early period in its development so that the chalaza is as the apparent apex, opposed to orthotropous. Anato, same as anato. Amberi, alt of umbori. Umbori, a soft tumor or bloody wart on horses or oxen. Ancestor, one from whom a person is descended whether on the father's or mother's side at any distance of time. A progenitor, a forefather. Ancestorial, ancestral, ancestorially, with regard to ancestors. Ancestral, of pertaining to derive from or possessed by an ancestor or ancestors, as an ancestral estate. Ancestress, a female ancestor. Ancestry, condition as to ancestors, ancestral lineage, hence birth or honorable descent. Anchor, an iron instrument which is attached to a ship by a cable, rope, or chain, and which being cast overboard lays hold of the earth by a fluke or hook, and thus retains the ship in a particular station. Anchored, of anchor, anchoring, of anchor, anchorable, fit for anchorage. Anchorage, the act of anchoring or the condition of lying at anchor. Anchorate, anchor-shaped, anchoress, a female anchoret. Anchoret, alt of anchorite. Anchorite, one who renounces the world and secludes himself usually for religious reasons. A hermit, a recluse. Anchoretic, alt of anchoretical. Anchoretical, pertaining to an anchoret or hermit, after the manner of an anchoret. Anchoretish, hermit-like. Anchoretism, the practice or mode of life of an anchoret. Anchorhold, the hold or grip of an anchor or that to which it holds. Anchoritis, an anchoress. Anchorless, without an anchor or stay, hence drifting, unsettled. Anchovy, a small fish about 3 inches in length of the herring family, Ingrowlus and Crucicolus, caught in vast numbers in the Mediterranean and pickled for exportation. The name is also applied to several allied species. Anchovy pear, a West Indian fruit like the mango in taste sometimes pickled, also the tree Grias cauliflora bearing this fruit. Ancusin, a resinoid coloring matter obtained from alkanet root. Ankylost, of ankylos. Ankylosing, of ankylos. Ankylos, to affect or be affected with ankylosis, to unite or consolidate so as to make a stiff joint, to grow together into one. Ankylosis, alt of ankylosis. Ankylosis, stiffness or fixation of a joint, formation of a stiff joint. Ankylotic, of or pertaining to ankylosis. Ancient, old, that happened or existed in former times, usually at a great distance of time, belonging to times long past, specifically applied to the times before the fall of the Roman Empire, opposed to modern, as ancient authors' literature history, ancient days. Anciently, in ancient times. Ancientness, the quality of being ancient, antiquity, existence from old times. Ancientry. Antiquity. What is ancient? Ancienty. Age, antiquity. Ancile. The sacred shield of the Romans, said to have fallen from heaven in the reign of Numa. It was the Palladium of Rome. Ancillary. Subservient or subordinate like a handmaid. Auxiliary. Ancil. A maidservant, a handmaid. Ancipital. Alt of ancipitus. Ancipitous. Two-edged instead of round. Set of certain flattened stems as those of blue grass and rarely also of leaves. Ancestroid. Hook-shaped. Ankle. See ankle. Ancum. A small ulcerous swelling coming suddenly. Also a whitlow. Ancons. Of ancon. Ancon. The olecranon or the elbow. Anconi. The corner or coin of a wall, crossbeam, or rafter. Anconal. Alt of anconial. Anconial. Of or pertaining to the ancon or elbow. Anconius. A muscle of the elbow and forearm. Anconoid. Elbow-like, anconal. Anconi. A piece of malleable iron wrought into the shape of a bar in the middle but unwrought at the ends. And a particle which expresses the relation of connection or addition. It is used to conjoin a word with a word, a clause with a clause, or a sentence with a sentence. Andabatism. Doubt, uncertainty. Andalusite. A silicate of aluminium occurring usually in thick rhombic prisms nearly square of a grayish or pale reddish tint. It was first discovered in Andalusia, Spain. Andante. Moving moderately slow but distinct and flowing. Quicker than larghetto and slower than allegretto. Andantino. Rather quicker than andante, between that allegretto. Andarac. Red orpiment. Andean. Pertaining to the Andes. Andesine. A kind of triclinic feldspar found in the Andes. Andesite. An eruptive rock allied to trachyte consisting essentially of a triclinic feldspar with pyroxene hornblende or hypersthene. Andine. Andean, as Andine flora. Andiron. A utensil for supporting wood when burning in a fireplace, one being placed on each side. A firedog, as a pair of andirons. Andronatomy. The dissection of a human body, especially of a male. Androtomy. Andrecium. The stamens of a flower taken collectively. Androgyne. An hermaphrodite. Androgynous. Alt of androgynal. Androgynal. Uniting both sexes in one or having the characteristics of both. Being in nature both male and female. Hermaphroditic. Androgyny. Alt of androgynism. Androgynism. Union of both sexes in one individual. Hermaphroditism. Android. Alt of androids. Androids. A machine or automaton in the form of a human being. Andromeda. A northern constellation supposed to represent the mythical Andromeda. Andron. The apartment appropriated for the males. This was in the lower part of the house. Andropetalous. Produced by the conversion of the stamens into petals as double flowers like the garden ranunculus. Androphagi. Cannibals, man-eaters, anthropophagi. Androphagus. Anthropophagus. Androphore. A support or column on which stamens are raised. Androsphinx. A man-sphinx. A sphinx having the head of a man and the body of a lion. Androspore. A spore of some algae which has male functions. Androdamus. Having the filaments of the stamens divided into two parts. Androtomy. dissection of the human body as distinguished from zootomy, anthropotomy. Androus, a terminal combining form, having a stamen or stamens, staminate, as monandrous with one stamen, polyandrous with many stamens. Anear, near, aneath, beneath. Anecdotage, anecdotes collectively, a collection of anecdotes. Anecdotal, pertaining to or abounding with anecdotes, as anecdotal conversation. Anecdote, unpublished narratives. Anecdotic, alt of anecdotical. Anecdotical, pertaining to consisting of or addicted to anecdotes. Anecdotist, one who relates or collects anecdotes. Analyst, same as analyst. Anneal, to anoint. Anelectric, not becoming electrified by friction, opposed to idioelectric. Anelectrode, the positive pole of a voltaic battery. Anelectrodenous, the condition of decreased irritability of a nerve in the region of the positive electrode or anode on the passage of a current of electricity through it. Anemogram, a record made by an anemograph. Anemograph, an instrument for measuring and recording the direction and force of the wind. Anemographic, produced by an anemograph, of or pertaining to anemography. Anemography, a description of the winds. Anemology, the science of the wind. Anemometer, an instrument for measuring the force or velocity of the wind, a wind gauge. Anemometric, alt of anemometrical. Anemometrical, of or pertaining to anemometry. Anemometrograph, an anemograph. Anemometry, the act or process of ascertaining the force or velocity of the wind. Anemone, a genus of plants of the ranunculus or crowfoot family, windflower. Some of the species are cultivated in gardens. Anemonic, an acrid poisonous crystallizable substance obtained from the anemone or from anemonin. Anemonin, an acrid poisonous crystallizable substance obtained from some species of anemone. Anemone, sea anemone. Anamorpholous, fertilized by the agency of the wind. Set of plants in which the pollen is carried to the stigma by the wind, wind fertilized. Anemoscope, an instrument which shows the direction of the wind, a wind vane. A weathercock, usually applied to a contrivance consisting of a vane above connected in the building with a dial or index with pointers to show the changes of the wind. Anencephalic, alt of anencephalus. Anencephalus, without a brain, brainless. Anenst, alt of anent. Anent, over against, as he lives anent the church. Aninterous, destitute of a stomach or an intestine. Aneroid, containing no liquid, said of a kind of barometer. Aints, once. Anesthesia, alt of anesthetic. Anesthetic, same as anesthesia anesthetic. Anet, the herb dill or dill seed. Anethol, a substance obtained from the volatile oils of anise, fennel, etc. in the form of soft, shining scales, called also anise camphor. Anetic, soothing. Aneurysm, a soft, pulsating hollow tumor containing blood arising from the preternatural dilation or rupture of the coats of an artery. Aneurysmal, of or pertaining to an aneurysm, as an aneurysmal tumor, aneurysmal diathesis. Anew, over again, another time, in a new form, afresh, as to arm anew, to create anew. Anfractuous, anfractuous, as anfractuous anthers. Anfractuosities. Of anfractuosity. Anfractuosity. A state of being anfractuous or full of windings and turnings. Sinuosity. Anfractuous. Winding. Full of windings and turnings. Sinuous. Tortuous. As the anfractuous spires of a bourne. Anfracture. A mazy winding. Angariation. Exaction of forced service. Compulsion. Angiology. Alt of angiotomy. Angiotomy. Same as angiology, angiotomy, etc. Angel. A messenger. Angeliage. Existence or state of angels. Angelet. A small gold coin formerly current in England. A half-angel. Angelfish. See under angel. Angelhood. The state of being an angel, angelic nature. Angelic. Alt of angelical. Angelical. Belonging to or proceeding from angels. Resembling characteristic of or partaking of the nature of an angel. Heavenly. Divine. Angelica. An aromatic umbelliferous plant. Archangelica officinalis or Angelica archangelica, the leaf stalks of which are sometimes candied and used in confectionery, and the roots and seeds as an aromatic tonic. Angelically, like an angel. Angelicalness, the quality of being angelic, excellence more than human. Angelify, to make like an angel, to angelize. Angelize, to raise to the state of an angel, to render angelic. Angel-like, resembling an angel. Angelolatry, worship paid to angels. Angelology, a discourse on angels or a body of doctrines in regard to angels. Angelophany, the actual appearance of an angel to man. Angelot, a French gold coin of the reign of Louis XI, bearing the image of Saint Michael. Also a piece coined at Paris by the English under Henry VI. Angelus, a form of devotion in which 3 Ave Marias are repeated. It is said at morning, noon, and evening at the sound of a bell. Anger, trouble, vexation, also physical pain or smart of a sore, etc. Angered, of anger, angering, of anger, angerly, angrily. Angevin, of or pertaining to Anjou in France. Angioenchyma, vascular tissue of plants consisting of spiral vessels, dotted, barred, and pitted ducts and laticiferous vessels. Angina, any inflammatory affection of the throat or faces, as the quinsy, malignant, sore throat, croup, etc., especially such as tends to produce suffocation, choking, or shortness of breath. Anginous, alt of anginos. Anginos, pertaining to angina or angina pectoris. Angiodash, a prefix or combining form in numerous compounds usually relating to seed or blood vessels or to something contained in or covered by a vessel. Angiocarpus, having fruit enclosed within a covering that does not form a part of itself, as the filbert covered by its husk or the acorn seated in its cupule. Angiography, a description of blood vessels and lymphatics. Angiology, that part of anatomy which treats of blood vessels and lymphatics. Angioma, a tumor composed chiefly of dilated blood vessels. Angiomonospermous, producing one seed only in a seed pod. Angioscope, an instrument for examining the capillary vessels of animals and plants. Angiosperm, a plant which has its seeds enclosed in a pericarp. Angiospermatus, same as angiospermous. Angiospermous, having seeds enclosed in a pod or other pericarp. Angiosporous, having spores contained in cells or thecae, as in the case of some fungi. Angiostomous, with a narrow mouth as the shell of certain gastropods. Angiotomy, dissection of the blood vessels and lymphatics of the body. Angle, the enclosed space near the point where two lines meet. A corner, a nook. Angled, of angle. Angling, of angle. Angle meter, an instrument to measure angles, ESP1 used by geologists to measure the dip of strata. Angler, one who angles. Angles, an ancient Low German tribe that settled in Britain, which came to be called Engleland, Angleland, or England. The Angles probably came from the district of Angeln, now within the limits of Schleswig, and the country now Lower Hanover, etc. Anglicite, a native sulfate of lead. It occurs in white or yellowish transparent prismatic crystals. Anglewise, in an angular manner, angularly. Angleworm, a earthworm of the genus Lumbricus frequently used by anglers for bait. See earthworm. Anglian, of or pertaining to the Angles. Anglic, Anglian, Anglican, English, of or pertaining to England or the English nation, especially pertaining to or connected with the established Church of England, as the Anglican Church doctrine, orders, ritual, etc. Anglicanism, strong partiality to the principles and rites of the Church of England. Anglice, in English, in the English manner, as Livorno, Anglice Leghorn. Anglicify, to anglicize. Anglicism, an English idiom, a phrase or form language peculiar to the English. Anglicity, the state or quality of being English. Anglicization, the act of anglicizing or making English in character. Anglicized, of anglicize. Anglicizing, of anglicize. Anglicize, to make English, to anglify, render conformable to the English idiom or to English analogies. Anglified, of anglify, anglifying, of anglify, anglify, to convert into English, to anglicize. Anglo-dash, a combining form meaning the same as English or English and or English conjoined with, as Anglo-Turkish treaty, Anglo-German, Anglo-Irish. Anglo-Catholic, of or pertaining to a church modeled on the English Reformation. Anglican, sometimes restricted to the ritualistic or high church section of the Church of England. Anglomania, a mania for or an inordinate attachment to English customs, institutions, etc. Anglomaniac, one affected with Anglomania. Anglophobia, intense dread of or aversion to England or the English. Anglo-Saxon, a Saxon of Britain that is an English Saxon or one the Saxons who settled in England as distinguished from a continental or Old Saxon. Anglo-Saxondom, the Anglo-Saxon domain, i.e., Great Britain and the United States, etc., the Anglo-Saxon race. Anglo-Saxonism, a characteristic of the Anglo-Saxon race, especially a word or an idiom of the Anglo-Saxon tongue. Angola, a fabric made from the wool of the Angora goat. Angola pea, a tropical plant, Cajanus indicus, and its edible seed a kind of pulse, so called from Angola in Western Africa, called also pigeon pea and Congo pea. Angor, great anxiety accompanied by painful constriction at the upper part of the belly, often with palpitation and oppression. Angora, a city of Asia Minor or Anatolia, which has given its name to a goat, a cat, etc. Angostura bark, an aromatic bark used as a tonic obtained from a South American of the roof family. Anguma moth, a small moth, Jalicia cerealela, which is very destructive to wheat and other grain. The larva eats out the interior of the grain, leaving only the shell. Angrily, in an angry manner, under the influence of anger. Angriness, the quality of being angry or of being inclined to anger. Angry, troublesome, vexatious, rigorous. Anguiform, snake-shaped. Anguilliform, eel-shaped. Anguin, of pertaining to or resembling a snake or serpent. Anguineal, anguineous. Anguineous, snake-like. Anguish, extreme pain either of body or mind. Excruciating distress. Angular, relating to an angle or to angles, having an angle or angles, forming an angle or corner, sharp-cornered, pointed, as an angular figure. Angularity, the quality or state of being angular, angularness. Angularly, in an angular manner, with of at angles or corners. Angularness, the quality of being angular. Angulate, alt of angulated. Angulated, having angles or corners. Angled, as angulate leaves. Angulation, a making angular. Angular formation. Angulodentate, angularly toothed as certain leaves. Angulometer, an instrument for measuring external angles. Angulos, angulus. Angulosity, a state of being angulous or angular. Angulus, angular, having corners, hooked. Angust, narrow, straight. Angustate, narrowed. Angustation, the act of making narrow, a straightening or contacting. Angustifoliate, alt of angustifolious. Angustifolious, having narrow leaves. Angostura bark, see Angostura bark. Anam, to hang. Anharmonic, not harmonic. Anulation, short and rapid breathing, a panting, asthma. Anheli, to pant, to be breathlessly anxious or eager for. Anhelos, anhelus, panting. Anhelus, short of breath, panting. Anhema, a South American aquatic bird, the horned screamer or kamichi, Palamedia cornuta. See kamichi. Anhinga, an aquatic bird of the southern United States, Platus anhinga, the darter or snake bird. Anhistus, without definite structure, as an anhistus membrane. Anhungered, a hungered, longing. Anhydride, an oxide of a nonmetallic body or an organic radical capable of forming an acid by uniting with the elements of water, so called because it may be formed from an acid by the abstraction of water. Anhydrite, a mineral of a white or a slightly bluish color, usually massive. It is anhydrous sulfate of lime and differs from gypsum in not containing water, whence the name. Anhydrous, destitute of water, as anhydrous salts or acids. Ani, altavano, ano, a blackbird of tropical America, the West Indies and Florida, Cartophagarani, allied to the cuckoos and remarkable for communistic nesting. Anicut, alt of anicut. Anicut, a dam or mole made in the course of a stream for the purpose of regulating the flow of a system of irrigation. An idiomatical, not idiomatic. Aniant, alt of aniantize. Aniantize, to frustrate, to bring to naught, to annihilate. Anai, nigh, a night, alt of a nights. A nights, in the night time, at night. Anil, a West Indian plant, Indigofera anil, one of the original sources of indigo, also the indigo dye. Anile, old womanish, imbecile. Anileness, anility, anilic, pertaining to or obtained from anil, indigotic, applied to an acid formed by the action of nitric acid on indigo. Analyte, one of a class of compounds which may be regarded as amides in which more or less of the hydrogen has been replaced by phenyl. Aniline, an organic base belonging to the phenylamines. It may be regarded as ammonia in which one hydrogen atom has been replaced by the radical phenyl. It is a colorless, oily liquid originally obtained from indigo by distillation, but now largely manufactured from coal tar or nitrobenzene as a base from which many brilliant dyes are made. Anility, the state of being and old woman, old womanishness, dotage. Animadversal, the faculty of perceiving, a percipient. Animadversion, the act or power of perceiving or taking notice, direct or simple perception. Animadversive, having the power of perceiving, percipient. Animadverted, of animadvert. Animadverting, of animadvert. Animadvert, to take notice, to observe, commonly followed by that. Animadverter, one who animadverts, a censurer, also OBS, a chastiser. Animal, an organized living being endowed with sensation and the power of voluntary motion, and also characterized by taking its food into an internal cavity or stomach for digestion, by giving carbonic acid to the air and taking oxygen in the process of respiration, and by increasing in motive power or active aggressive force with progress to maturity. Animalcular, alt of animalculin. Animalculin, of pertaining to or resembling animalcules. Animalcule, a small animal as a fly, spider, etc. Animalculism, the theory which seeks to explain certain physiological and pathological phenomena by means of animalcules. Animalculist, one versed in the knowledge of animalcules. Animalcula, of animalculum. Animalculum, an animalcule. Animalish, like an animal. Animalism, the state, activity, or enjoyment of animals. Mere animal life without intellectual or moral qualities. Sensuality. Animality, animal existence or nature. Animalization, the act of animalizing, the giving of animal life or endowing with animal properties. Animalized, of animalize. Animalizing, of animalize. Animalize, to endow with the properties of an animal, to represent an animal form. Animally, physically. Animalness, animality. Animastic, pertaining to mind or spirit, spiritual. Animated, of animate. Animating, of animate. Animate, to give natural life to make alive, to quicken, as the soul animates the body. Animatedly, with animation. Animator, one who animates. Animation, the act of animating or giving life or spirit, the state of being animate or alive. Animative, having the power of giving life or spirit. Animator, one who or that which animates. An animator. Anime, of a different tincture from the animal itself, set of the eyes of a rapacious animal. Animism, the doctrine taught by Stahl that the soul is the proper principle of life and development in the body. Animist, one who maintains the doctrine of animism. Animistic, of or pertaining to animism. Animos, alt of animus. Animus, full of spirit, hot, vehement, resolute. Animosness, vehemence of temper. Animosities, of animosity. Animosity, mere spiritedness or courage. Aneme, of animus. Animus, animating spirit, intention, temper. Anion, an electronegative element or the element which in electrochemical decompositions is evolved at the anode, opposed to cation. Anise, an umbelliferous plant, Pimpinella anisum, growing naturally in Egypt and cultivated in Spain, Malta, etc. for its carminative and aromatic seeds. Aniseed, the seed of the anise, also a cordial prepared from it. Anisette, a French cordial or liqueur flavored with anise seeds. Anisic, of or derived from anise, as anisic acid, anisic alcohol. Anisodactyla, alt of anisodactyls. Anisodactyls, a group of herbivorous mammals characterized by having the hoofs in a single series around the foot, as the elephant, rhinoceros, etc. Anisodactylus, characterized by unequal toes, 3 turned forward and 1 backward, as in most passerine birds. Anisomeric, not isomeric, not made of the same components in the same proportions. Anisomerous, having the number of floral organs unequal as 4 petals and 6 stamens. Anisymmetric, not isometric, having unsymmetrical parts, set of crystals with 3 unequal axes. Anisopetalous, having unequal petals. Anisophilous, having unequal leaves. Anisopleura, a primary division of gastropods including those having spiral shells. The 2 sides of the body are unequally developed. Anisopoda, a division of crustacea which in some its characteristics is intermediate between amphipoda and isopoda. Anisosteminous, having unequal stamens, having stamens different in number from the petals. Anisosthenic, of unequal strength. Anisotrope, alt of anisotropic. Anisotropic, not isotropic, having different properties in different directions. Thus, crystals of the isometric system are optically isotropic, but all other crystals are anisotropic. Anisotropous, anisotropic. Anchor, a liquid measure in various countries of Europe. The Dutch anchor, formerly also used in England, contained about 10 of the old wine gallons, or 8/imperial gallons. Anchorite, a mineral closely related to dolomite but containing iron. Ankle, the joint which connects the foot with the leg, the tarsus. Ankled, having ankles, used in composition as well ankled. Anklet, an ornament or a fetter for the ankle, an ankle ring. Ankylos, same as ankylos. Anlus, a broad dagger formerly worn at the girdle. And alt of anat. Anat, a half year's stipend over and above what is owing for the incumbency due to a minister's heirs after his decease. Anna, an East Indian money of account the 16th of a rupee, or about 2/cents. Annal, see annals. Analyst, a writer of annals. Analytic, pertaining to or after the manner of an analyst, as the dry analytic style. Analyze, to record in annals. Annals, a relation of events in chronological order, each event being recorded under the year in which it happened. Annates, alt of annates. Annates, the first year's profits of a spiritual preferment anciently paid by the clergy to the Pope, first fruits. In England, they now form a fund for the augmentation of poor livings. Annealed, of anneal. Annealing, of anneal. Anneal, to subject to great heat, and then cool slowly as glass, cast iron, steel, or other metal for the purpose of rendering it less brittle. To temper, to toughen. Annealer, one who or that which anneals. Annectant, connecting, annexing. Annelid, alt of annelidin. Annelidin, of or pertaining to the annelida. Annelida, a division of the articulata having the body formed of numerous rings or annular segments and without jointed legs. The principal subdivisions are the Chaetopoda, including the Oligochaeta or earthworms, and Polychaeta or marine worms, and the Hirudinea or leeches. Annelidus, of the nature of an annelid. Annelida, see annelida. Anneloid, an animal resembling an annelid. Annexed, of annex. Annexing, of annex. Annex, to join or attach, usually to subjoin. To affix, to append, followed by to. Annexation, the act of annexing, process of attaching, adding, or appending. The act of connecting. Union, as the annexation of Texas to the United States or of chattels to the freehold. Annexationist, one who favors annexation. Annexer, one who annexes. Annexion, annexation. Annexionist, an annexationist. Annexment, the act of annexing or the thing annexed. Appendage, annihilable, capable of being annihilated. Annihilated, of annihilate. Annihilating, of annihilate. Annihilate, to reduce to nothing or non-existence. To destroy the existence of, to cause to cease to be. Annihilation, the act of reducing to nothing or non-existence, or the act of destroying the form or combination of parts under which a thing exists so that the name can no longer be applied to it, as the annihilation of a corporation. Annihilationist, one who believes that eternal punishment consists in annihilation or extinction of being. A destructionist. Annihilative, serving to annihilate, destructive. Annihilator, one who or that which annihilates, as a fire annihilator. Annihilatory, annihilative. Anniversarily, annually. Anniversary, returning with the year at a stated time. Annual, yearly, as an anniversary feast. Anniversaries, of anniversary. Anniverse, anniversary. Annotated, curved somewhat in the form of the letter S. Anno Domini, in the year of the Christian era, as A.D. 1887. Annominate, to name. Annomination, paranomasia, punning. Annotated, of annotate. Annotating, of annotate. Annotate, to explain or criticize by notes, as to annotate the works of Bacon. Annotation, a note added by way of comment or explanation, usually in the plural, as annotations on ancient authors or on a word or a passage. Annotationist, an annotator, annotative, characterized by annotations, of the nature of annotation. Annotator, a writer of annotations, a commentator. Annotatory, pertaining to an annotator, containing annotations. Annotine, a bird 1 year old or that has once molted. Annotinous, a year old, in yearly growths. Annato, alt of arnato. Arnato, a red or yellowish red dyeing material prepared from the pulp surrounding the seeds of a tree, Bixa or Alana, belonging to the tropical regions of America. It is used for coloring cheese, butter, etc. Announced, of announce. Announcing, of announce. Announce, to give public notice or first notice of, to make known, to publish, to proclaim. Announcement, the act of announcing or giving notice, that which announces, proclamation, publication. Announcer, one who announces. Annoyed, of annoy. Annoying, of annoy. Annoy, to disturb or irritate, especially by continued or repeated acts. To tease, to ruffle in mind. To vex, as I was annoyed by his remarks. Annoyance, the act of annoying or the state of being annoyed. Molestation, vexation, annoy. Annoyer, one who or that which annoys. Annoyful, annoying. Annoyous, troublesome, annoying. Annual, of or pertaining to a year, returning every year, coming or happening once in the year, yearly. Annualist, one who writes for or who edits an annual. Annually, yearly, year by year. Annuary, annual. Annualer, a priest employed in saying annuals or anniversary masses. Annuant, nodding, as annuant muscles used in nodding. Annuitant, one who receives or it's entitled to receive an annuity. Annuities, of annuity. Annuity, a sum of money payable yearly to continue for a given number of years for life or forever, an annual allowance. Annulled, of annul. Annulling, of annul. Annul, to reduce to nothing, to obliterate. Annular, pertaining to or having the form of a ring, forming a ring, ringed, ring-shaped, as annular fibers. Annularity, annular condition or form, as the annularity of a nebula. Annulary, in an annular manner. Annulary, having the form of a ring, annular. Annulata, a class of articulate animals nearly equivalent to Annelida, including the marine annelids, earthworms, Jeffreya, Gymnotoma, leeches, etc. See Annelida. Annulate, one of the Annulata. Annulated, furnished with or composed of rings. Ringed, surrounded by rings of color. Annulation, a circular or ring-like formation, a ring or belt. Annulet, a little ring. Annullable, that may be annulled. Annuller, one who annuls. Annulment, the act of annulling, abolition, invalidation. Annuloid, of or pertaining to the annuloida. Annuloida, a division of the articulata including the annelids and allied groups, sometimes made to include also the helminths and echinoderms. Annulosa, a division of the invertebrata nearly equivalent to the articulata. It includes the arthropoda, and Anarthropoda. By some zoologists, it is applied to the former only. Annulosan, one of the annulosa. Annulos, furnished with or composed of rings or ring-like segments, ringed. Annuli, of annulus. Annulus, a ring-like part or space. Enumerate, to add on, to count in. Enumeration, addition to a former number. Enunciable, that may be announced or declared, declarable. Enunciated, of enunciate. Enunciating, of enunciate. Enunciate, to announce. Enunciation, the act of announcing. Announcement, proclamation, as the enunciation of peace. Enunciative, pertaining to enunciation, announcing. Enunciator, one who announces. Specifically, an officer in the Church of Constantinople whose business it was to inform the people of the festivals to be celebrated. Enunciatory, pertaining to or containing announcement, making known. Anoa, a small wild ox of Celebes, Anoa depressicornis, allied to the buffalo, but having long, nearly straight horns. Anode, the positive pole of an electric battery, or more strictly, the electrode by which the current enters the electrolyte on its way to the other pole, opposed to cathode. Anodon, a genus of freshwater bivalves having no teeth at the hinge. Anodyne, serving to assuage pain, soothing. Anodynous, anodyne. Anoil, to anoint with oil. Anointed, of anoint. Anointing, of anoint. Anoint, to smear or rub over with oil or an unctuous substance. Also to spread over as oil. Anointer, one who anoints. Anointment, the act of anointing or state of being anointed, also an ointment. Anolis, a genus of lizards which belong to the family Iguanidae. They take the place in the New World of the chameleons in the Old, and in America are often called chameleons. Anomal, anything anomalous. Anomaloped, alt of anomalopede. Anomalopede, having anomalous feet. Anomalism, an anomaly, a deviation from rule. Animalistic, alt of animalistical. Animalistical, irregular, departing from common or established rules. Animalistically, with irregularity. Anomaloflorus, having anomalous flowers. Anomalous, deviating from a general rule, method, or analogy. Abnormal, irregular, as an anomalous proceeding. Anomalously, in an anomalous manner. Anomalousness, quality of being anomalous. Anomalies, of anomaly. Anomaly, deviation from the common rule. An irregularity, anything anomalous. Anomia, a genus of bivalve shells allied to the oyster, so called from their unequal valves of which the lower is perforated for attachment. Anemophilus, having leaves irregularly placed. Anemura, alt of anemura. Anemura, a group of decapod crustacea of which the hermit crab in an example. Anomural, alt of anemurin. Anemurin, irregular in the character of the tail or abdomen, as the anomural crustaceans. Anomie, disregard or violation of law. Anon, straightway, at once. Annona, a genus of tropical or subtropical plants of the natural order Annonaceae, including the soursop. Annonaceous, pertaining to the order of plants including the soursop, custard, apple, etc. Anonym, one who is anonymous, also sometimes used for pseudonym. Anonymity, the quality or state of being anonymous. Anonymousness, also that which anonymous. Anonymous, nameless, of unknown name, also of unknown or unavowed authorship, as an anonymous benefactor, an anonymous pamphlet or letter. Anonymously, in an anonymous manner, without a name. Anonymousness, the state or quality of being anonymous. Anophyte, a moss or moss-like plant which cellular stems having usually an upward growth and distinct leaves. Anopla, one of the two orders of Nemertians. See Nemertina. Anoplothera, alt of Anoplotherium. Anoplotherium, a genus of extinct quadrupeds of the order Ungulata whose were first found in the gypsum quarries near Paris, characterized by the shortness and feebleness of their canine teeth, whence the name. Anoplura, a group of insects which includes the lice. Anopsia, alt of anopsy. Anopsy, want or defect of sight, blindness. Anorexia, alt of anorexy. Anorexy, want of appetite without a loathing of food. Anormal, not according to rule, abnormal. Anorn, to adorn. Anorthic, having unequal oblique axes, as anorthic crystals. Anorthite, a mineral of the feldspar family commonly occurring in small glassy crystals, also a constituent of some igneous rocks. It is a lime feldspar. See feldspar. Anosmia, loss of the sense of smell. Another, one more in addition to a former number, a second or additional one similar in likeness or in effect. Another gains, of another kind. Another gates, of another sort. Another guess, of another sort. Anata, see anato. Anura, see anura. Anurus, see anurus. Ansi, of ansa. Ansa, a name given to either of the projecting ends of Saturn's ring. Ansated, having a handle. Anserated, having the extremities terminate in the heads of eagles, lions, etc., as an anserated cross. Ansers, a Linnaean order of aquatic birds swimming by means of webbed feet as the duck or of lobed feet as the grebe. In this order were included the geese, ducks, auks, divers, gulls, petrels, etc. Anseriforms, a division of birds including the geese, ducks, and closely allied forms. Anserine, pertaining to or resembling a goose or the skin of a goose. Answerous, resembling a goose, silly, simple. Answered, of answer. Answering, of answer. Answer, to speak in defense against, to reply to in defense, as to answer a charge, to answer an accusation. Answerable, obliged to answer, liable to be called to account, liable to pay, indemnify, or make good, accountable, amenable, responsible, as an agent is answerable to his principal, to be answerable for a debt or for damages. Answerableness, the quality of being answerable, liable, responsible, or correspondent. Answerably, in an answerable manner, in due proportion or correspondence, suitably. Answerer, one who answers. Answerless, having no answer or impossible to be answered. And T, and it that is, and it or if it. See in conjunction. Ant, a contraction for are and am not, also used for is not, now usually written ain't. Ant dash, see anti prefix. Ant, a hymenopterous insect of the Linnaean genus Formica, which is now made a family of several genera. An emmet, a pismire. Anti, of anta, a species of pier produced by thickening a wall at its termination, treated architecturally as a pilaster with capital and base. Antacid, a remedy for acidity of the stomach as an alkali or absorbent. Antacrid, corrective of acrimony of the humors. Antean, pertaining to Antaeus, a giant athlete slain by Hercules. Antagonism, opposition of action, counteraction or contrariety of things or principles. Antagonist, one who contends with another, especially in combat, an adversary, an opponent. Antagonistic, alt of antagonistical. Antagonistical, opposing in combat, combating, contending or acting against, as antagonistic forces. Antagonized, of antagonize. Antagonizing, of antagonize. Antagonize, to contend with, to oppose actively, to counteract. Antagony, contest, opposition, antagonism. Antalgic, alleviating pain. Antalkali, alt of antalkaline. Antalkaline, anything that neutralizes or that counteracts an alkaline tendency in the system. Antambulacral, away from the ambulacral region. Antinaclasis, a figure which consists in repeating the same word in a different sense, as learn some craft when young, that when old you may live without craft. Antanagoge, a figure which consists in answering the charge of an adversary by a countercharge. Antaphrodisiac, capable of blunting the venereal appetite. Antaphrodisiac, antaphrodisiac. Antipoplectic, good against apoplexy. Anarchism, opposition to government in general. Anarchist, one who opposes all government. Anarchistic, alt of antarchistical. Antarchistical, opposed to all human government. Antarctic, opposite to the northern or Arctic pole, relating to the southern pole or to the region near it, and applied especially to a circle distant from the pole 23i, 1/2 28/. Thus we say the Antarctic pole circle ocean region current etc. Antares, the principal star in Scorpio, called also the Scorpion's heart. Antarthritic, counteracting or alleviating gout. Antasthmatic, opposing or fitted to relieve asthma. Antbear, an edentate animal of tropical America, the tamanoir, living on ants. It belongs to the genus Myrmecophaga. Antbird, see antbird under ant-n. Antcattle, various kinds of plant lice or aphids tended by ants for the sake of the honeydew which they secrete. See aphips. Anti-dash, a Latin preposition and prefix, akin to gr, anti-skr, anti-goth, and anda, only in comp. As, and ond, only in comp. Cf answer along, g, ant, in comp. The Latin ante is generally used in the sense of before in regard to position order. Ante, each player's stake which is put into the pool before. Ante, the game begins. Anteact, a preceding act. Anteal, being before or in front. Anteater, one of several species of edentates and monotremes that feed upon ants. See antbear, pangolin, aardvark, and echidna. Antecedaneous, antecedent, preceding in time. Antecede, to go before in time or place, to precede, to surpass. Antecedents, the act or state of going before in time. Precedence. Antecedency, the state or condition of being antecedent. Priority. Antecedent, going before in time. Prior. Anterior, preceding, as an event antecedent to the deluge, an antecedent cause. Antecedently, previously, before in time, at a time preceding, as antecedently to conversion. Antecessor, one who goes before, a predecessor. Antechamber, a chamber or apartment before the chief apartment and leading into it in which persons wait for audience. An outer chamber. See lobby. Antechapel, the outer part of the west end of a collegiate or other chapel. Antecedents, see ant/keans. Antecommunion, a name given to that part of the Anglican liturgy for the communion which precedes the consecration of the elements. Antecursor, a forerunner, a precursor. Antedate, prior date, a date antecedent to another which is the actual date. Antedated, of antedate. Antedating, of antedate. Antediluvial, before the flood or deluge in Noah's time. Antediluvian, of or relating to the period before the deluge in Noah's time, hence antiquated, as an antediluvian vehicle. Antefact, something done before another act. Antefixes, of antefix. Antefixa, of antefix. Antefix, an ornament fixed upon a frieze. Anteflexion, a displacement forward of an organ, esp the uterus, in such manner that its axis is bent upon itself. An egg, one of the small white egg-shaped pupae or cocoons of the ant often seen in or about anthills and popularly supposed to be eggs. Antelope, one of a group of ruminant quadrupeds intermediate between the deer and the goat. The horns are usually annulated or ringed. There are many species in Africa and Asia. Antelucan, held or being before light, a word applied to assemblies of Christians in ancient times of persecution held before light in the morning. Antemeridian, being before noon, in or pertaining to the forenoon. Abreve, a.m. Antemetic, tending to check vomiting. Antemosaic, being before the time of Moses. Antemundane, being or occurring before the creation of the world. Antemural, an outwork of a strong high wall with turrets in front of the gateway, as of an old castle, for defending the entrance. Antenatal, before birth. Antenacene, of or in the Christian church or era anterior to the First Council of Nice held AD 325 as Antenacene faith. Antennae, of antenna. Antenna, a movable articulated organ of sensation attached to the heads of insects and crustacea. There are 2 in the former and usually 4 in the latter. They are used as organs of touch, and in some species of crustacea the cavity of the ear is situated near the basal joint. In insects they are popularly called horns and also feelers. Antennal, belonging to the antennae. Anteniferous, bearing or having antennae. Antenniform, shaped like antennae. Antennule, a small antenna, applied to the smaller pair of antennae or feelers of crustacea. Antenumber, a number that precedes another. Antenuptial, preceding marriage, as an antenuptial agreement. Anteorbital, same as antorbital. Antepaschal, pertaining to the time before the Passover or before Easter. Antepast, a foretaste. Antependium, the hangings or screen in front of the altar, an altar cloth, the frontal. Antepenult, alt of antepenultima. Antepenultima, the last syllable of a word except two, as sil in monosyllable. Antepenultimate, of or pertaining to the last syllable but two. Antiphialtic, good against nightmare. Antepileptic, good against epilepsy. Antipone, to put before, to prefer. Antiport, an outer port gate or door. Anteportico, an outer porch or vestibule. Anteposition, the placing of a before another which by ordinary rules ought to follow it. Anteprandial, preceding dinner. Antepredicament, a prerequisite to a clear understanding of the predicaments and categories such as definitions of common terms. Anterior, before in time, antecedent. Anteriority, the state of being anterior or preceding in time or in situation, priority. Anteriorly, in an anterior manner, before. Anteroom, a room before or forming an entrance to another, a waiting room. Anterodash, a combining form meaning anterior front, as anteroposterior front and back, anterolateral front side anterior, and at the side. Antes, ante, see anta, anti-stature, a small entrenchment or work of palisades or of sacks of earth. Anti-stomach, a cavity which leads into the stomach as in birds. Anti-temple, the portico or narthex in an ancient temple or church. Anteversion, a displacement of an organ ESP of the uterus in such manner that its whole axis is directed further forward than usual. Antevert, to prevent. Anthelia, of anthelion. Anthelion, a halo opposite the sun consisting of a colored ring or rings around the shadow of the spectator's own head as projected on a cloud or on an opposite fog bank. Anthelix, same as antihelix. Anthelmintic, good against intestinal worms. Anthem, formerly a hymn sung in alternate parts in present usage, a selection from the Psalms or other parts of the Scriptures or the liturgy set to sacred music. Anthemion, a floral ornament. See palmette. Anthemis, chamomile, a genus of composite herbaceous plants. Anthemwise, alternately. Anther, that part of the stamen containing the pollen or fertilizing dust which when mature is emitted for the impregnation of the ovary. Antheridia, of antheridium. Antheridium, the male reproductive apparatus in the lower consisting of a cell or other cavity in which spermatozoids are produced, called also spermary. Antheriferous, producing anthers as plants. Antheriform, shaped like an anther, anther-shaped. Antherogynous, transformed from anthers as the petals of a double flower. Antheroid, resembling an anther. Antherizoid, alt of antherizoid. Antherizoid, one of the mobile male reproductive bodies in the antheridia of cryptogams. Anthesis, the period or state of full expansion in a flower. Anthill, a mound thrown up by ants or by termites in forming their nests. Anthobian, a beetle which feeds on flowers. Anthabranchia, a division of nudibranchiate mollusca in which the gills form a wreath or cluster upon the posterior part of the back. See Nudibranchiata and Doris. Anthocarpus, having some portion of the floral envelopes attached to the pericarp to form the fruit, as in the checkerberry, the mulberry, and the pineapple. Anthocyanin, same as anthocyan. Anthodium, the inflorescence of a compound flower in which many florets are gathered into an involucrate head. Anthography, a description of flowers. Anthode, resembling a flower, flower-like. Anthocyan, the blue coloring matter of certain flowers. Same as cyanin. Antholite, a fossil plant like a petrified flower. Anthological, pertaining to anthology, consisting of beautiful extracts from different authors, especially the poets. Anthologist, one who compiles an anthology. Anthology, a discourse on flowers. Anthomania, a extravagant fondness for flowers. Anthony's fire, see St. Anthony's fire under saint. Anthophagus, eating flowers, said of certain insects. Anthophore, the stipe when developed into an internode between calyx and corolla, as in the pink family. Anthophorus, flower-bearing, supporting the flower. Anthophyllite, a mineral of the hornblende group of a yellowish-gray or clove-brown color. Anthorism, a description or definition contrary to that which is given by the adverse party. Anthotaxy, the arrangement of flowers in a cluster, the science of the relative position of flowers, inflorescence. Anthozoa, the class of the Coelenterida which includes the corals and sea anemones. The three principal groups or orders are Acyaneria, Actinaria, and Madrepararia. Anthozoan, pertaining to the Anthozoa. Anthozoic, of or pertaining to the Anthozoa. Anthracene, a solid hydrocarbon C6H4.C2H2.C6H4, which accompanies naphthalene in the last stages of the distillation of coal tar. Its chief use is in the artificial production of alizarin. Anthracite, of or relating to anthrax, as anthracite blood. Anthracifferous, yielding anthracite, as Anthracifferous strata. Anthracite, a hard compact variety of mineral coal of high luster differing from bituminous coal in containing little or no bitumen, in consequence of which it burns with a nearly non-luminous flame. The purer specimens consist almost wholly of carbon, also called glance coal and blind coal. Anthracitic, of pertaining to or like anthracite, as anthracitic formations. Anthracoid, resembling anthrax in action, of the nature of anthrax, as an anthracoid microbe. Anthracomancy, divination by inspecting a burning coal. Anthracometer, an instrument for measuring the amount of carbonic acid in a mixture. Anthracometric, of or pertaining to an anthracometer. Anthraconite, a coal-black marble, usually emitting a fetid smell when rubbed, called also stinkstone and swinestone. Anthraquinone, a hydrocarbon C6H4.C2O2.C6H for subliming and shining yellow needles. It is obtained by oxidation of anthracene. Anthrax, a carbuncle. Anthrenus, a genus of small beetles, several of which in the larval state are very destructive to woolen goods for etc. The common museum pest is A. varius. The carpet beetle is A. scrofularii. The larvae are commonly confounded with moths. Anthropic, alt of anthropical. Anthropical, like or related to man. Human. Anthropody, the group that includes man only. Anthropocentric, assuming man as the center or ultimate end, applied to theories of the universe or of any part of it as the solar system. Anthropogenic, of or pertaining to anthropogeny. Anthropogeny, the science or study of human generation or the origin and development of man. Anthropoglet, an animal which has a tongue resembling that of man, as the parrot. Anthropography, that branch of anthropology which treats of the actual distribution of the human race in its different divisions as distinguished by physical character, language, institutions, and customs, in contradistinction to ethnography, which treats historically of the origin and filiation of races and nations. Anthropoid, resembling man, applied especially to certain apes as the orang or gorilla. Anthropoidal, anthropoid, anthropoidia, the suborder of primates which includes the monkeys, apes, and man. Anthropolatry, man worship. Anthropolite, a petrifaction of the human body or of any portion of it. Anthropologic, alt of anthropological. Anthropological, pertaining to anthropology, belonging to the nature of man. Anthropologist, one who is versed in anthropology. Anthropology, the science of the structure and functions of the human body. Anthropomancy, divination by the entrails of human being. Anthropometric, alt of anthropometrical. Anthropometrical, pertaining to anthropometry. Anthropometry, measurement of the height and other dimensions of human beings, especially at different ages or in different races, occupations, etc. Anthropomorpha, the manlike or anthropoid apes. Anthropomorphic, of or pertaining to anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism, the representation of the deity or of a polytheistic deity under a human form or with human attributes and affections. Anthropomorphist, one who attributes the human form or other human attributes to the deity or to anything not human. Anthropomorphite, one who ascribes a human form or human attributes to the deity or to a polytheistic deity. Taylor, specifically one of a sect of ancient heretics who believe that God has a human form, etc. Tillotson, anthropomorphitic, to anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphitism, anthropomorphism, anthropomorphize, to attribute a human form or personality to. Anthropomorphology, the application to God of terms descriptive of human beings. Anthropomorphosis, transformation into the form of a human being. Anthropomorphous, having the figure of or resemblance to a man, as an anthropomorphous plant. Anthropopathic, alt of anthropopathical. Anthropopathical, of or pertaining to anthropopathy. Anthropopathism, alt of anthropopathy. Anthropopathy, the ascription of human feelings or passions to God or to a polytheistic deity. Anthropophagi, man-eaters, cannibals. Anthropophagic, alt of anthropophagical. Anthropophagical, relating to cannibalism or anthropophagy. Anthropophaginian, one who eats human flesh. Anthropophagite, a cannibal. Anthropophagus, feeding on human flesh, cannibal. Anthropophagy, the eating of human flesh, cannibalism. Anthropophuism, human nature. Anthroposcopy, the art of discovering or judging of a man's character, passions, and inclinations from a study of his visible features. Anthroposophy, knowledge of the nature of man, hence human wisdom. Anthropotomical, pertaining to anthropotomy or the dissection of human bodies. Anthropotomist, one who is versed in anthropotomy or human anatomy. Anthropotomy, the anatomy or dissection of the human body. Androtomy. Antihypnotic, see antihypnotic. Anthropochondriac, see antihypochondriac. Anthysteric, see antihysteric. Anti, a prefix meaning against, opposite, or opposed to, contrary, or in place of, used in composition in many English words. It is often shortened to ant-, as antacid Antarctic. Anti, the two projecting feathered angles of the forehead of some birds, the frontal points. Antialbumin, a body formed from albumin by pancreatic and gastric digestion. It is convertible into antipeptone. Antialbumose, see albumose. Anti-American, opposed to the Americans, their aims or interests, or to the genius of American institutions. Anti-aphrodisiac, same as antiaphrodisiac. Anti-apoplectic, same as antipoplectic. Antiar, a virulent poison prepared in Java from the gum resin of one species of the upas tree, Antiaris toxicaria. Antiurin, a poisonous principle obtained from antiar. Antiasthmatic, same as antiasthmatic. Antitrition, anything to prevent the effects of friction. ESP, a compound lubricant for machinery, etc., often consisting of plumbago with some greasy material. Antifriction grease. Antibacchius, a foot of 3 syllables, the first 2 long and the last short. Hashtag. Antibilious, counteractive of bilious complaints, tending to relieve biliousness. Antibrachial, antibrachium, that part of the forelimb between the brachium and the carpus, the forearm. Antibromic, an agent that destroys offensive smells, a deodorizer. Antiburger, one who seceded from the burghers, 1747, deeming it improper to take the burgess oath. Antic, old, antique. Antict, of antic, antict, of antic. Anticatarrhal, efficacious against catarrh. Anticathode, the part of a vacuum tube opposite the cathode. Upon it the cathode rays impinge. Anticausotic, same as anticausotic. Anticausotic, good against an inflammatory fever. Antichamber, see antechamber. Antichlor, any substance, but especially sodium hyposulfite, used in removing the excess of chlorine left in paper pulp or stuffs after bleaching. Antichrist, a denier or opponent of Christ. Specif, a great antagonist, person or power expected to precede Christ's second coming. Antichristian, opposed to the Christian religion. Antichristianism, alt of anti-Christianity. Anti-Christianity, opposition or contrariety to the Christian religion. Antichristianly, in an anti-Christian manner. Antichronical, deviating from the proper order of time. Antichronism, deviation from the true order of time. Anachronism. Antichthons, of antichthon. Antichthon, a hypothetical Earth counter to ours, or on the opposite side of the sun. Anticipant, anticipating, expectant, with of. Anticipated, of anticipate. Anticipating, of anticipate. Anticipate, to be before in doing, to do or take before another, to preclude or prevent by prior action. Anticipation, The act of anticipating taking up, placing, or considering something beforehand or before the proper time in natural order. Anticipative. Anticipating or containing anticipation. Anticipator. One who anticipates. Anticipatory. Forecasting. Of the nature of anticipation. Anti-civic. Opposed to citizenship. Anticivism. Opposition to the body politic of citizens. Anticlastic. Having to opposite curvatures that is curved longitudinally in one direction and transversely in the opposite direction as the surface of a saddle. Anticlimax. A sentence in which the ideas fall or become less important and striking at the close, the opposite of climax. It produces a ridiculous effect. Anticlinal. Inclining or dipping in opposite directions. See synclinal. Anticlinoria. Of anticlinorium. Anticlinorium. The upward elevation of the crust of the earth resulting from a anticlinal. Antically. Oddly, grotesquely. Anticmask. An anti-mask. Anticness. The quality of being antic. Anti-constitutional. Opposed to the Constitution, unconstitutional. Anti-contagious. Opposing or destroying contagion. Anticonvulsive. Good against convulsions. Antisur. A dangerous inflammatory swelling of a horse's breast just opposite the heart. Anticus. Facing toward the axis of the flower, as in the introrse anthers of the water lily. Anticyclone. A movement of the atmosphere opposite in character as regards direction of the wind and distribution of barometric pressure to that of a cyclone. Antidotal. Having the quality an antidote, fitted to counteract the effects of poison. Antidotary. Antidotal. Antidote. A remedy to counteract the effects of poison or of anything noxious taken into the stomach, used with against for or to, as an antidote against for or to poison. Antidotical. Serving as an antidote. Antidromus. Changing the direction in the spiral sequence of leaves on a stem. Antidysenteric. Good against dysentery. Antiemetic. Same as antiemetic. Antiephialtic. Same as antiphialtic. Antiepileptic. Same as antiepileptic. Antifebrile. Febrifuge. Antifebrin. Acetanilide. Anti-federalist. One of party opposed to a federative government. Applied particularly to the party which opposed the adoption of the Constitution of the United States. Antifriction. Something to lessen friction. Anti-attrition. Antigalactic. Causing a diminution or a suppression of the secretion of milk. Anti-Gallican. Opposed to what is Gallic or French. Antigraph. A copy or transcript. Antiguggler. A crooked tube of metal to be introduced into the neck of a bottle for drawing out the liquid without disturbing the sediment or causing a gurgling noise. Antihelix. The curved elevation of the cartilage of the ear within or in front of the helix. See ear. Antihemorrhagic. Tending to stop hemorrhage. Antihydrophobic. Counteracting or preventing hydrophobia. Antihydropic. Good against dropsy. Antihypnotic. Tending to prevent sleep. Antihypochondriac. Counteractive of hypochondria. Antihysteric. Counteracting hysteria. Antiicteric. Good against jaundice. Antilegomena. Certain books of the New Testament which were for a time not universally received, but which are now considered canonical. These are the Epistle to the Hebrews, the Epistles of James and Jude, the second Epistle of Peter, the second and third Epistles of John, and the Revelation. The undisputed books are called the homologomena, antilibration, a balancing, equipoise, antilithic, tending to prevent the formation of urinary calculi or to destroy them when formed. Antilogarithm, the number corresponding to a logarithm. The word has been sometimes, though rarely, used to denote the complement of a given logarithm. Also, the logarithmic cosine corresponding to a given logarithmic sine. Antylogous, of the contrary name or character, opposed to analogous. Antilogies, of antilogy. Antilogy, a contradiction between any words or passages in an author. Antiloemic, a remedy against the plague. Antilopine, of or relating to the antelope. Antiloquist, a contradictor. Antiloquy, contradiction. Antilysic, antihydrophobic. Antimacassar, a cover for the back or arms of a chair or sofa, etc., to prevent them from being soiled by macassar or other oil from the hair. Antimagistrical, opposed to the office or authority of magistrates. Antimalarial, good against malaria. Antimask, a secondary mask or grotesque interlude between the parts of a serious mask. Anti-Mason, one opposed to Freemasonry. Anti-Masonry, opposition to Freemasonry. Anti-Mephitic, good against mephitic or deleterious gases. Antimere, one of the two halves of bilaterally symmetrical animals. One of any opposite symmetrical or homotypic parts in animals and plants. Antimetaboly, a figure in which the same words or ideas are repeated in transposed order. Antimetathesis, an antithesis in which the members are repeated in inverse order. Antimeter, a modification of the quadrant for measuring small angles. Antimonarchic, alt of anti-monarchical. Anti-monarchical, opposed to monarchical government. Antimonarchist, an enemy to monarchical government. Antimonate, a compound of antimonic acid with a base or basic radical. Antimonial, of or pertaining to antimony. Antimoniated, combined or prepared with antimony, as antimoniated tartar. Antimonic, pertaining to or derived from antimony. Set of those compounds of antimony in which this element has its highest equivalence, as antimonic acid. Antimonious, pertaining to or derived from antimony. Set of those compounds of antimony in which this element has an equivalence next lower than the highest, as antimonious acid. Antimonite, a compound of antimonious acid and a base or basic radical. Antimonuretted, combined with or containing antimony, as antimonuretted hydrogen. Antimony, an elementary substance resembling a metal in its appearance and physical properties, but in its chemical relations belonging to the class of nonmetallic substances. Antinational, antagonistic to one's country or nation or to a national government. Antinephritic, counteracting or deemed of use in diseases of the kidneys. Antinomian, of or pertaining to the antinomians, opposed to the doctrine that the moral law is obligatory. Antinomianism, the tenets or practice of antinomians. Antinomist, an antinomian. Antinomies, of antinomy. Antinomy, opposition of one law or rule to another law or rule. Antiochian, pertaining to Antiochus, a contemporary with Cicero and the founder of a sect of philosophers. Antiodontalgic, efficacious in curing toothache. Antiorgastic, tending to allay venereal excitement or desire. Sedative. Antipapal, opposed to the Pope or to popery. Antiparallel, running in a contrary direction. Antiparallels, straight lines or planes which make angles in some respect opposite in character to those made by parallel lines or planes. Antiparalytic, good against paralysis. Antiparalytical, antiparalytic. Antipathetic, alt of antipathetical. Antipathical, having a natural contrariety or constitutional aversion to a thing, characterized by antipathy, often followed by to. Antipathic, belonging to antipathy, opposite, contrary, allopathic. Antipathist, one who has an antipathy. Antipathize, to feel or show antipathy. Antipathis, having a natural contrariety, adverse, antipathetic. Antipathies, of antipathy. Antipathy, contrariety or opposition in feeling, settled aversion or dislike, repugnance, distaste. Antipeptone, a product of gastric and pancreatic digestion, differing from hemipeptone and not being decomposed by the continued action of pancreatic juice. Antiperiodic, a remedy possessing the property of preventing the return of periodic paroxysms or exacerbations of disease, as in intermittent fevers. Antiperistaltic, opposed to or checking motion, acting upward, applied to an inverted action of the intestinal tube. Antiperistasis, opposition by which the quality opposed acquires strength, resistance or reaction roused by opposition or by the action of an opposite principle or quality. Antiperistatic, pertaining to antiperistasis. Antipedalous, standing before a pedal as a stamen. Antipharmac, antidotal, alexipharmac. Antiphlogiston, an opposer of the theory of phlogiston. Antiphlogistic, opposed to the doctrine of phlogiston. Antiphon, a musical response, alternate singing or chanting. See antiphony and antiphon. Antiphonal, of or pertaining to antiphony or alternate singing, sung alternately by a divided choir or opposite choirs. Antiphonary, a book containing a collection of antiphons. The book in which the antiphons of the breviary with their musical notes are contained. Antiphon, the response which one side of the choir makes to the other in a chant, alternate chanting or signing. Antiphoner, a book of antiphons. Antiphonic, antiphonal, antiphonies, of antiphony. Antiphony, a musical response, also antiphonal chanting or signing. Antiphrasis, the use of words in a sense opposite to their proper meaning, as when a court of justice is called a court of vengeance. Antiphrastic, alt of antiphrastical. Antiphrastical, pertaining to antiphrasis. Antiphysic, relieving or curing phthisis or consumption. Antiphysical, contrary to nature, unnatural. Antiplastic, diminishing plasticity. Antipodagric, good against gout. Antipodal, pertaining to the antipodes, situated on the opposite side of the globe. Antipode, one of the antipodes, anything exactly opposite. Antipodean, pertaining to the antipodes or the opposite side of the world. Antipodal. Antipodes, those who live on the side of the globe diametrically opposite. Antipole, the opposite pole, anything diametrically opposed. Antipope, one who is elected or claims to be pope in opposition to the pope canonically chosen. ESP applied to those popes who resided at Avignon during the Great Schism. Antipsoric, of use in curing the itch. Antiptosis, the putting of one case for another. Antiputrefactive, alt of antiputrescent. Antiputrescent, counteracting or preserving from putrefaction. Antiseptic. Antipyric, checking or preventing suppuration. Antipyresis, the condition or state of being free from fever. Antipyretic, efficacious in preventing or allaying fever. Antipyrin, an artificial alkaloid believed to be efficient in abating fever. Antipyrotic, good against burns or pyrosis. Antiquarian, pertaining to antiquaries or to antiquity, as antiquarian literature. Antiquarianism, character of an antiquary, study or love of antiquities. Antiquarianize, to act the part of an antiquary. Antiquary, pertaining to antiquity. Antiquaries, of antiquary. Antiquate, to make old or obsolete. To make antique, to make old in such a degree as to put out of use. Hence to make void or abrogate. Antiquated, grown old. Hence, bygone, obsolete, out of use, old-fashioned, as an antiquated law. Antiquatedness, quality of being antiquated. Antiquateness, antiquatedness. Antiquation, the act of making antiquated or the state of being antiquated. Antique, old, ancient, of genuine antiquity, as an antique statue. In this sense, it usually refers to the flourishing ages of Greece and Rome. Antiquely, in an antique manner. Antiqueness, the quality of being antique, an appearance of ancient origin and workmanship. Antiquist, an antiquary, a collector of antiques. Antiquitarian, an admirer of antiquity, used by Milton in a disparaging sense. Antiquities, of antiquity. Antiquity, the quality of being ancient, ancientness, great age, as a statue of remarkable antiquity, a family of great antiquity. Antirachitic, good against the rickets. Antirenter, one opposed to the payment of rent. ASP, one of those who in 1840 to 47 resisted the collection of rents claimed by the patroons from the settlers on certain manorial lands in the state of New York. Antisabbatarian, one of a sect which opposes the observance of the Christian Sabbath. Antisacerdotal, hostile to priests or the priesthood. Antitians, alt of Antitii. Antitii, the inhabitants of the earth living on different sides of the equator whose shadows at noon are cast in opposite directions. Antiscoletic, alt of antiscolic. Antiscolic, anthelmintic, antiscorbutic, counteracting scurvy. Antiscorbutical, antiscorbutic. Antiscriptural, opposed to or not in accordance with the Holy Scriptures. Antisepalous, standing before a sepal or calyx leaf. Antiseptic, alt of antiseptical. Antiseptical, counteracting or preventing putrefaction or a putrescent tendency in the system. Antiputrefactive. Antiseptically, by means of antiseptics. Anti-slavery, opposed to slavery. Antisocial, tending to interrupt or destroy social intercourse, averse to society or hostile to its existence, as antisocial principles. Anti-socialist, one opposed to the doctrines and practices of socialists or socialism. Anti-solar, opposite to the sun, set of the point in the heavens 180 I 1/2 distant from the sun. Antispasmodic, good against spasms. Antispast, a foot of 4 syllables, the first and fourth short and the second and third long. Hashtag. Antispastic, believed to cause a revulsion of fluids or of humors from one part to another. Antisplenetic, good as a remedy against disease of the spleen. Antistrophe, in Greek choruses and dances, the returning of the chorus exactly answering to a previous strophe or movement from right to left. Hence, the lines of this part of the choral song. Antistrophic, of or pertaining to an antistrophe. Antistrophon, an argument retorted on an opponent. Antistromatic, antistromous. Antistromous, good against scrofulous disorders. Antisyphilitic, efficacious against syphilis. Antitheism, the doctrine of antitheists. Antitheist, a disbeliever in the existence of God. Antitheses, of antithesis. Antithesis, an opposition or contrast of words or sentiments occurring in the same sentence, as the prodigal robs his heir, the miser robs himself. He had covertly shot at Cromwell. He how openly aimed at the Queen. Antithet, an antithetic or contrasted statement. Antithetic, alt of antithetical. Antithetical, pertaining to antithesis or opposition of words and sentiments, containing or of the nature of antithesis, contrasted. Antithetically, by way antithesis. Antitoxin, alt of antitoxin. Antitoxin, a substance, sometimes the product of a specific microorganism and sometimes naturally present in the blood or tissues of an animal, capable of producing immunity from certain diseases or of counteracting the poisonous effects of pathogenic bacteria. Antitrade, a tropical wind blowing steadily in a direction opposite to the trade wind. Antitragus, a prominence on the lower posterior portion of the conchus of the external ear opposite the tragus. See ear. Antitrochanter, an articular surface on the ilium of birds against which the great trochanter of the femur plays. Antitropal, alt of antitropus. Antitropus, at the extremity most remote from the hilum as the embryo, or inverted with respect to the seed as the radical. Antitypal, antitypical. Antitype, that of which the type is the pattern or representation, that which is represented by the type or symbol. Antitypical, of or pertaining to an antitype, explaining the type. Antitypus, resisting blows, hard. Antitypy, opposition or resistance of matter to force. Anti-vaccination, opposition to vaccination. Anti-vaccinationist, an anti-vaccinist. Anti-vaccinist, one opposed to vaccination.